meeting to order. Please mute all your audio at all times unless you're speaking. Item number 1, roll call to order. Number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Director Van Dam, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, I will. Put your hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Van Dam. Item number 3, roll call. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Madam President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable. Shelley?
Yes.
Dwayne Chisholm.
Here.
Tilden Kim.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item number 4, adoption of agenda.
I'll make a motion we adopt the agenda. This is Keith.
I second the motion. Ms. Rob.
All in favor? Oh, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes, thank you. Item number 5, public comments and period open to the public. If there's anyone that would like to speak from the audience or from the Zoom call, please do so now. Item number 6, new business. Do we have any?
We do not.
Thank you. Item number 7, consent calendar.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent calendar. This is Keith.
I second it. It's Frank.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes, thank you. Item number 8, Director Donato, Finance Committee.
Oh, thank you. Yesterday, we Finance Committee met and went over the bills and items that are in front of you. And item 8A1, consideration possible action to approve agency memberships for 20 and 21. And during your agenda, is there any, Dwayne, is there anything to discuss?
Yes, I'll have a short presentation here. This matter has become fairly routine with the board. We do an annual list of various memberships and organizations that the agency is going to be members of for the 2021 fiscal year. During the course of the review of the memberships, Director Donato pointed out that Gavia and the AB Board of Trade have merged. We did follow up with that, and they have merged, and we reduced the AB Board of Trade amount and included it in the Gavia amount. So the combined Gavia Board of Trade organization would have a $5,000 total. amount for the membership to that organization. The recommended budget for the year is $500,000, with the vast majority of those funds going to the State Water Contractors Association that has been very active on behalf of the agency on state project matters in Sacramento. That would conclude my staff report. I will note that we did add Urban Water Institute as an additional organization this year, which we had through a board request to have that included in the list of memberships and organizations. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I'll make a motion that we approve 8A1. I don't know, what is that? 484.
No, 500.
500,000.
Okay.
Have a second?
It's Rob. I second that.
Roll call. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Surcival.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, brings us to item 8A2. It's resolution R-20-07, letter of credit renewal, authorization and execution of delivery of the Fourth Amendment to reimbursement agreement and the Fourth Amendment to fee letter. And this is with Wells Fargo. Who's going to touch base on that?
Teresa Yates, our finance manager, will provide a short staff report for this item.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. A little background on the letter of credit. This letter of credit is supporting $45 million worth of variable COPs that the agency issued in 2008. This letter of credit was originally issued in May of 2008 and has been renewed every 3 years since then with Wells Fargo. The current letter of credit is set to expire July 28. So staff and the finance committee looked at the options that were available to the agency, and when reviewing those options, decided that renewing the letter of credit for another 3-year term at the rate of 34 basis points, which is a lower rate than what it currently is at 0.39 or 39 basis points, was the best option for the agency. On the board meeting of April 14th of this year, the board approved the term sheet to renew this letter of credit. And in your packet this evening is the resolution authorizing the execution of the agreements to renew the letter of credit with Wells Fargo. By approving the resolution and authorizing the agreements now, the agency is able to take advantage of the lower rates starting in May as opposed to the end of July when the letter of credit is set to expire. Our bond counsel, Jim Anderson, has reviewed the agreements, and he is on the line to answer any questions if there are any.
Director Donato, would you like to make a comment about where we are as far as our rating?
Yeah, thank you. Hang on a second here. Down. Yeah, where are we here? Stanley & Poor's, no,
Page 51.
Where the heck is my? Yeah, I know, but I put my notes. My notes were on the. Oh, here it is. The the S&P rated as a double A, and I think Stanley & Poor's was as an A. Is that what it was, Teresa?
Standard & Poor's is AA, Moody's is A1. So both of the rating agencies were in the highest bracket on that fee schedule.
But, well, yeah. Either way, we're at this time of some uncertainties, I guess, in society. Those ratings are very, very well, and a lot of that has to do with, I think, we're going to get to the next in our report regarding the Treasury's report, but we're very healthy, and also the letter of credit. The cost of having that letter of credit had dropped. How much did it drop, Teresa? The cost to us?
So the new rate that we're able to get with Wells Fargo will reduce our annual administration fee for that letter of credit by $22,500.
Right. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's good news. Everything's is very, very good. So I'll go ahead and make a motion. We approve 8A2, resolution R-20-07 for the letter of credit.
I'll second the motion. This is Keith.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Roll call vote.
Director Van,
Oh, go ahead.
one question, Director Van Dam, is that rate lock in at 3.9% for 3 years?
Yes, it's the 0.34 for 3 years, as long as we stay within that rating bracket. The fee schedule that's included in the packet shows how that fee would change if the agency were to receive a lower rating by one or both of the agencies. But yes, the 0.34 is good for 3 years.
So explain that. So basically, Gary, what that is that there's a balance. The way they rate you, these companies, is that you got to have ongoing projects, and you've got to have a certain amount of money in reserves. At the same time, they don't want you hoarding all the money and not building any projects. They want you to have a balance. So that's how as long as we stay within that balance, which we have, I don't know for how many decades, we've always had a very good rating with them.
I see.
Maybe you can elaborate, Teresa, on that?
Yeah, that's correct. There's different things that the rating agencies look at. They usually perform an annual review of the agency's financial position and what projects are in place. And that's one of the things they look for, what projects are ongoing. They look at the rate structure and if the board is willing to increase rates when necessary. They look at how much agency reserves there are. So there's several factors that go into their rating.
That is, and we started getting really strong when we brought Rapatellis in. When they had that, our platform of that 7.5%,
Right.
basic rate. That really is helpful with their decision making. So we're not undercutting ourselves on digging into our reserves.
Right.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsable.
Yes, thank you, Madam Secretary.
Okay, that brings it. I have one more. It looks like That brings us to our consideration of possible action to select a new agency auditing firm for fiscal year 2019-2020. Berkeley and Cox has been our consultant for probably 20 years, somewhere in that ballpark, and they decided not to do any more auditing for anybody in their firm. So Teresa, you can maybe elaborate on that a little bit too.
That's correct. Berkey and Cox has been auditing the agency for over 30 years, and they decided this year to discontinue their auditing services. So, as a firm, they are not providing auditing services to anybody anymore. So that forced us to go out and issue an RFP to look for a new auditing firm, which is what we did. The presentation on the screen and in your packet, we'll be looking at who we issued an RFP to and which firms responded. We'll look at the qualifications and experience of those firms, as well as what criteria we evaluated them on, the proposed fees that we received, and what the recommendation is moving forward. So the RFP went out. What's that?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. The RFP went out to 13 different audit firms in California. We received 6 responses. Highlighted are the 6 firms that responded. The first, Brown Armstrong, is in Bakersfield. The next 2 are both in Riverside. Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott is in San Bernardino. The Pun Group is in Santa Ana. And White, Nielsen, Deal, and Evans is in Irvine. We asked for their qualification and relevant experience. And included in your packet is a listing of each of the firms' experience, a lot of their clients, their governmental clients, water agency clients. Some of them do counties, different government agencies. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that and see what kind of experience they have. The criteria that we use to evaluate the proposals included, are the firms independent of Avek, and do they have a license to practice in California? Did they have any conflicts with the agency? Did they pass peer review? Do they have governmental as well as state water contractor experience? And are they experienced and familiar with water banking transactions? And did they have adequate staffing plan with quality staff? And did they understand the scope of the audit, and could they meet our schedule? All of the firms that responded met all of the criteria. So next we looked at the fees that were proposed by each of the 6 firms. And that's that first section. It lists the 6 different responding firms. And I should note that the second column should say, if needed for federal funding, it cut off. Okay, so the first column is a 3-year total. So for each of the firms, if it was just a straight audit every year for the 3 years, that would be the total fee. If we needed a single audit for federal funding. So there's a possibility that not this year, but the next 2 years, the agency could receive federal funding for the SNP Phase 2 project, the grant funding that was applied for. So if we do receive more than $750,000 in 1 year and expend that much or more in a year, we would need a single audit. So that second column is what that additional fee would be. And then the third column would be the total. So the first year without the single audit and the next 2 years with the single audit. That would be the total. So Brown Armstrong proposed the lowest fees, $5,900 less than the next lowest proposal, and $25,200 less than the highest proposed fee. That next section is a breakdown of the annual fee for Brown Armstrong. So you could see it would be $21,500 per year if no single audit was needed. And it would be $21,500 for 2020. And if we needed a single audit in 2021, it would be $24,900. And then in 2022, $24,900 for that year. Okay, so their proposed fees are a not to exceed amount for each of the 3 years, and Avek would not have to commit to a 3-year audit for 3 years of the audits to secure these fees.
And let me say something. The reason why that breakdown is there is the committee wanted to make sure that since this is a new firm to us and we've been with somebody for 30 years, if we did make a decision to go with Brown Armstrong, that we had a way to get out of the contract before the 3 years if we were dissatisfied after the first year.
Right, right. Okay, so staff recommendation would be that since all firms are equally qualified to perform the agency's audit, to select Brown Armstrong since they have the lowest proposed fee.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve Brown Armstrong for the way Teresa presented it to us.
This is Audrey, a second.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, Director Van Dam, I had a question.
Okay.
How much were we paying Berkey and Cox for this audit before?
Okay, so the last year's audit fee was $24,000 from Berkey and Cox. So this will be a couple thousand less per year.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sorcible.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Okay, that concludes the finance report.
Thank you, Director Donato. Item 8B, Capital Improvement Program Committee. Director Donato.
Okay, so we had a discussion on this as well the other day, and it's a consideration of possible action to amend the professional services agreement with Kennedy Jenks to include task order 3 for the East Side Water Bank expansion project, not to exceed $383,682. Dwayne, do you want to give us a report on it, or is it Justin's going
We're going to provide that report. He's our engineering manager.
Okay.
Members of the board, I'll give a short presentation here on the Eastside Water Bank Expansion Project, which we presented to the Capital Projects Committee recently. So we're going to just remind everybody on what the original project or the existing project is, go through some of the alternatives that were developed under Kennedy Jenks's first phase of the scope of this project, and then go into the recommended alternative and some of the next steps in our final recommendation. So this is our existing Eastside Water Bank facility. It consists of 3 2-acre recharge ponds, which are located here, and here. 3 recovery wells, one there, and one there. It has 1 well that was actually drilled, but it wasn't equipped at that time. And that well is here. And that was a little bit of a lower production well that at the time it wasn't necessary for operations, and we've discovered over time that there is going to be some benefits to having that well. It includes a pump station, a chlorination building, and a control room, as well as a 100,000 gallon air gap tank, which is used to pump back to the aqueduct if needed. So as I mentioned, Kennedy Jenks had an original scope for this project to develop some conceptual designs and alternatives to where we might be able to expand our east side water bank at the nearby the existing location. And the first alternative that they developed was using some land here to the northwest of our existing water bank. And I guess I should note here that this is our existing bank is located at Avenue U and 96th Street East. So just everybody has an idea of where that's located. So this was their first alternative. As going through this, the agency actually ended up acquiring, we don't own this land here, and so it was talking about purchasing that. The agency ended up purchasing this 160-acre parcel here to the east of the existing project. And so with that, Kennedy Jenks shifted their focus on coming up with some other alternatives to designing some recharge ponds out there. And so they came up with alternatives 2A and 2B. They differ only very slightly. I'll explain those differences. It would include 3 23-acre recharge basins on the property to the east over here. And then in their conceptual design, it included drilling 2 brand new wells and acquiring an existing irrigation well. Those would be for a future phase of the project, but just that's why they're located here on this diagram. Okay. And that would include as well equipping this existing well, which I mentioned previously wasn't done initially, but we found that there would be some operational advantages to having that well equipped now. So the new project would be similar to what we have at the West Side Water Bank, which this is an image of. These will be low berm recharge basins. The existing ones there are cheaper, smaller, and engineered berms. And so each alternative would have almost a 9,000 acre foot per year recharge capacity. Similar acreage for the 2 alternatives, and all of the data is based on 0.75 acre feet recharge rate, which is about the average of what we've been seeing on the existing site. And that would account for 8 months of recharge, so we could have some time off during the summer months and allow for rotating those basins for recharge efficiencies. So as I mentioned, there's 2 alternatives. The first looked at using our existing basins as a pretreatment option, where we could allow some of the silt and sediment that comes in from the raw water at the California aqueduct to settle out before pumping those over into our recharge basins. The other alternative is to come off the existing pipeline with a new pipeline and just directly recharge those basins without going through this pre-treatment step. So going through some of the cost comparisons, alternative 1 is more expensive. That included a little bit of land acquisition, as well as it included a couple additional recovery wells. And keep in mind, these are full build out cost estimates. Alternative 2A, which included the pumping option. The pumping option is a little bit more expensive because of the pumps required to do that. And then alternative 2B, which is the recharge directly into the recharge basins, has an estimated capital cost of just under $7.8 million.
Can you show us that previous map for a second so we can see what those different alternatives are again, please?
Yeah, sure. So going back all the way to alternative 1, that was including this property which the agency does not own, included a few recovery wells. And then alternative 2A included the recharge basin here on the east, but it would have the water being delivered directly to the existing 2-acre recharge basins. and then being pumped over into each of the recharge ponds here. And then alternative 2B included, we have our existing pipeline that takes the water to those recharge basins with T off of that, with the new pipeline that would come off to the east and then discharge into each of the 3 new basins there.
Okay, thank you.
Oops. So breaking down all the recommended alternative, which is TB, which was the cheapest of the 3 options, we thought at this moment in time and for the near future, we don't really see a need based on the demands on the east side system to drill recovery wells right away. And so we do see some benefit, as I mentioned, to equipping the existing well that's on site, as well as being able to recharge additional water when we have it. So we thought a phased approach would be best, where we would equip the existing well, install the pipeline, and develop the recharge basins on the property to the east. And so as I mentioned, the total build out, including, this includes 2 recovery wells, and that may change in the future, would be $7.8 million. But for this first phase, which we would see some benefits to right away, is just under $2.8 million. And so the next steps of this work is we need to complete CEQA on the existing 160 acres. We haven't done that yet. And this is the time of year that some of those studies are required to look for sensitive species and plants in that area. So phase 1 of the project under Kennedy Jenks's Task Order 3 would be to complete that CEQA. It would include a final design of the existing well that's there that would get us some additional capacity in that system. And then it would do the preliminary design of the recharge pipeline, or the recharge basins and the raw water pipeline after the CEQA is complete, probably this fall. And so staff and the Capital Projects Committee would recommend that the board authorize the general manager to amend Kennedy Jenks's existing professional services agreement to add this work under Task Order 3 in a not to exceed amount of $383,682 in accordance with their proposal, which was included in your packet. And I will note that $500,000 was budgeted for this work in the current fiscal year budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Yeah, Director Van, I have a question.
Yes.
On that ag well that you were talking about, is that already purchased, or does that have to be? Is that part of that 160 acre purchase?
No, that wasn't on the property, the 160 acre property. That was on the other side. This would not include purchasing that well.
That's on a different option, right?
Yeah, that could be considered in the future if the price was right. We decided to acquire that irrigation well.
Is that north of the existing water bank?
Yeah, I'll go back here a little bit. It's located right here. This is just to the northwest of our existing bank here.
Okay, northwest.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay, Justin, can you tell me why we want to do this with ES1R when it's been underperformed?
Yeah, so the original pump test when the project the original project was done, found that well to be a low producer. It was around 300 gallons per minute. And at that time, we were drilling these other 3 wells here, which were a little bit higher producing. And we thought at that time, with the capacity that we had from the other 3 wells that turned out to produce a little bit better, that at that time, it didn't make sense to fully equip that. However, we did spend the money to drill that well and install all the casing and everything. We just didn't equip it with a pump at that time and the required electrical and recovery pipelines. So since we've been operating, I think, over the last few years, the operations team out there has expressed that having a well with a little bit lower capacity would actually be beneficial and could take some of the workload off of the existing wells that are out there. So they do see some operational benefits and efficiencies to equipping that well at this time. So that just came with their experience of operating the equipment that's out there.
Okay, great. That's pretty important to know because it was something that kind of didn't work out at the time. So now if we can utilize it for some different purpose, that's significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'll go ahead and I'll move on. 8B1, capital improvement toward the contract to Kennedy Jenks for $383,682.
Do you have a second?
This is Director Miller. I second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Terrace.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Just trying to get on. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes, thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
before I conclude, I want to commend Justin for the excellent report he has given us on everything to do with that project. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you very much.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Okay, item 8C, State Water Project Committee. Presentation information only on State Water Project incidental take permit, biological opinions, and long-term operation of the State Water Project. Presentation by General Manager Dwayne Chisholm, please.
Yes, Board President Sourcewell, members of the board, I'm going to provide you a presentation on a somewhat complicated series of events, and I'm going to try and provide it at a fairly high level so that the board can kind of understand what has occurred. I'm going to go back a little bit in history just to provide some context to how the operations of the State Water Project have changed over the years. So if you bear with me, we'll try and get through this, and feel free to stop me at any time should you have any questions moving forward. I did a little research with regards to the history of the State Water Project, and the Department of Water Resources currently has an appropriative surface water rights permit and authority to divert and store water for beneficial uses. You know, that's what is the basis of the State Water Project, is having those surface water rights to be able to divert that water. Interestingly enough, the State Water Project was initially considered back in the 30s and actually became a reality in the 60s with Governor Brown. And that was about a 30-year time period. And I'm going to note that for you, and we'll talk about that again. DWI then issued the contracts to 29 state water contractors to deliver that stored water to their service areas. So they took that water rights permit and then went ahead and contracted with the 29 state water contractors to deliver that water. And then with those contracts, DWI was then able to pay for the project, issue the bonds, and build the infrastructure to deliver that water. And the state water infrastructure includes Orville Dam, San Luis Dam, aqueduct, pump stations, pipelines, as you're all aware of. And it's interesting enough, its configuration took about 3 years to complete. And then one of the aspects of the project that was planned but wasn't completed was a conveyance facility around the delta due to the low demand for water at that particular time. In retrospect, well, much of our environmental impacts can be attributed to the absence of this facility. It's interesting to note that even back in 1960s, the engineers at the time were lobbying for the facility because they knew that the use of the pumps to deliver water to the south part of the state was not a long-term solution that was viable. At the same time, the Central Valley Project, which is a federal project that followed the same general timeline as the State Water Project, was being considered and constructed. This project is primarily for irrigation for the Central Valley area, farming areas. The project is federally funded and is operated by the United States Bureau of Reclamation, USBR. The CVP infrastructure includes Shasta Dam, various canals, pipelines, pump stations, and then we also have some shared facilities between the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project, namely the San Luis Reservoir and portions of the aqueduct south of the San Luis Reservoir. So up until this particular period, into the early 1990s, 3 years after the project was conceived and started, the only regulatory factors that affected how much water was available for the project was the hydrology, the amount of rain, the snowfall, and the amount of water in Lake Orville. And it's, excuse me, question? Oh, I guess not. So the environmental regulations began with the passage of the Porter Cologne Act. This is what created the State Water Quality Control Board, what is known as the State Board, and their issuance of a water quality control plan, which governs the outflow of the project and how much is necessary in order to maintain water quality concerns within the Delta. We also have the California Endangered Species Act, and that's administered by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife in this particular case. And they provide consistent. Right?
Can everybody please make sure their computers are on mute? Thank you.
And so the California Department of Fish and Wildlife provides consistency and incidental take permits. In addition to the California Endangered Species Act, there is the Federal Endangered Species Act, and it's called ESA, and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service are the ones that are governing that particular portion of the biological opinions that they issue with regards to complying with the Federal Endangered Species Act, or the Endangered Species Act as commonly known, ESA. And it's interesting to note that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is concerned primarily with freshwater fish, and the National Marine Fisheries Service is concerned with ocean fish and fish that go from the ocean to freshwater, such as the Chinook salmon. And that's why both of those agencies are involved in administering the Endangered Species Act. First biological opinions were issued by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service in 2007 to protect federally listed species, which were the Delta smelt, the green sturgeon, the Chinook salmon, both spring and winter run, and the Central Valley steelhead. At that particular time, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife made a consistency determination of the federal biops. So when these biops were issued in 2007, the state just accepted those biological opinions and only issued an incidental take permit for the one species that is state listed but not federal listed, which is the longfin smelt. So the important thing factor there is that the State Water Project is responsible for the compliance with the long-filled smelt incidental take permit requirements. And when we talk about biological opinions, it's a biological opinions where that also has mitigation measures or criteria for operation of the project that limit the amount of pumping that can occur on the south end of the delta. So that's what we're talking about when these biological opinions and these consistency determinations are made. So with that in mind, there was a cooperative agreement that was entered into back in that time period with DWR and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for operation of the two projects. They were operating under the same federal rules, and so that was moving along fairly nicely for the last 10 or so years. And then the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation requested initial reconsultation in order to, based on the changed conditions and new information. In essence, they had 10 years of studies on the Delta and on how better ways to protect the endangered species. And they wanted to include that in a new biological opinion. To provide another 10 years of long-term operational agreement between the two projects. So the National Marine Fisheries and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released their final biological opinions in October 2019. That was after many months of consultation with the state of California. The National Marine Fisheries and U.S. Fish and Wildlife provided their own independent review, uninfluenced by anyone. They came up with a non-jeopardy opinion, which is the opinion that the project description as outlined would not jeopardize federal species with the operational criteria that's contained in the biological opinion. The record decision of the biological opinions was signed by the president on February 19, 2020, and the state attorney general for the state of California filed a lawsuit on February 20th, the very next day, with regards to the biological opinions as being inadequate to protect endangered species. So with that in mind, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife refused to provide consistency determination with the federal BIOPS as they had in the past. What they chose to do was to issue incidental take permits for the 4 listed species with their own operational criteria. It only affects the State Water Project operation because California Department of Fish and Wildlife has no authority to regulate how the Central Valley Project operates. The initial take permits were issued on March 31st, 2020. DWR is currently operating to those standards, so that operational criteria is under operation right now. So, in essence, what the current situation is we have the State Water Project operating under a more restrictive criteria than the Central Valley Project. Under the federal 2020 BIOPS, it is estimated the project could increase exports by 400,000 acre feet, evenly split between the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project. Because there is significant additional information that wasn't available in 2008 that with all of the studies that have been going on in the last 10 to 12 years, they were able to take this information and devise created a biological opinion that if you operated in this way, you could protect the fish and still be able to export 400,000 acre feet more per year on average. So, so what happens is what happened with the incidental take permit, that operating criteria that the State Water Project has to comply with eliminates that 200 acre foot benefit for the State Water Project. So so right now, each project is operating under different criteria, which, as you can imagine, can be fairly difficult to do. So this chart provides a graphic of what has occurred. You look at the 2008-2009 biological opinions, you can see there was 2.4 million acre feet in State Water Project exports and 2.5 million acre feet of federal CBP exports, or in essence 4.9 million acre feet. The 2020 biological opinions provides 5.3 million acre feet. That's the 400,000 in additional, evenly split between the federal project and the state project. Under the California Endangered Species Act incidental take permit, we've reduced this from 5.3 down to 5.1. The federal side CBP project maintains their 2.7 million acre feet, but you can see this is where the State Water Project reduced by 200 acre feet in estimate, which is very consistent to the 2008-2009 biological opinions. And that provides a graphic representation of what I was trying to communicate to you. So some of the State Water Project concerns is that the incidental take application of permits is not consistent with the CEQA and the proposed project. The CEQA proposed project, it was identified as having no significant impacts, yet the ITP goes way beyond the legal standard in putting permit conditions on the project. Some examples of those excessive conditions, including requires mitigation of CBP upstream effects on fisheries. These are not mitigations that are not impacts associated with the State Water Project. Summer outflow requirements are not related to the effects of the State Water Project. And the authority of, and this is the one that's probably is the most disturbing to me, is the authority of the Fish and Wildlife Service to require export reductions beyond the California Endangered Species Act obligation. So a regulatory fish agency would have the ability to reduce unilaterally the export of water south to fulfill our water needs. In addition, their actions cost about $22 million a year over the 10-year period. In addition to that, the ITP is inconsistent with the standards and the management goals that the state has for many other things. As we mentioned, the state board is currently working on the voluntary agreements, and this would severely impair the ability to institute those agreements and causing probably significant more litigation. Also, there is the SIGMA regulations and importation of water to improve the condition of groundwater bases. It's a state water goal or state goal, and this would hamper that. Also, the climate change adaptation makes coordinated operations very difficult, and it doesn't rely on the best available science, and it just is going to have a significant effect on state water operations. Some of the reaction came from a variety of groups, both Democrats and Republicans. There was letters from Senator Feinstein's office and Congress member McCarthy's office sent to the governor to reconsider the ITP issue. There was letters from other Congress members, also Assembly members, state senators, indicating that they should reconsider the ITP. There was also letters from metropolitan water districts, other water districts, state water contractors, all asking to avoid litigation and find consistency with federal PIOPs so we can continue to move forward. As I mentioned forward, this is what the state actions have entailed. They filed their lawsuit in February. Today, the Attorney General secured a preliminary injunction to block the implementation of the federal PIOPs. And it would appear that DWR plans to operate the state water project other than to incidental take criteria and neglecting what requests have been made from a broad group of constituents. So that concludes my staff report for you. I know I said a lot there, but hopefully it gives you a sense of where we are today with regards to biological regulations and how those biological regulations over time have reduced the amount of water that can be exported south of the Delta to meet our needs, other needs in Southern California. With that, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions? That was a quite thorough report. A lot of information there. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 9, old business. Do we have any old business?
No old business.
Okay, we'll go on to item 10, general manager's report on water supply projects and programs. Director Chisholm. Yeah. You, Dwayne, General Manager Chisholm, please.
Yes, I have the general manager report. We'll have Justin Libsay will provide a first item that we have on our report tonight is a High Desert Water Bank monthly report. These are reports that we'll provide you on a regular basis to help keep you informed as to the progress in the High Desert Water Project.
Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Sorry about that. Good evening again. As General Manager Chisholm mentioned, just going to give a brief update on the activities regarding the High Desert Water Bank. Just keep you guys informed on what's going on. So the first slide here is just an executive summary, just to remind everybody what the project objectives are for the High Desert Water Bank. Our goal is to recharge up to 70,000 acre feet per year, and with a recovery capacity of the same, and a total storage goal of 280,000 acre feet, of course, with the 10% leave behind. So short-term goals over the next 3 months to continue acquiring the necessary lands to make the project work, as well as begin the geotechnical drillings and the groundwater, and then procure a driller for the initial 3 test wells that'll help support some of the groundwater modeling and ultimate production property. There we go. This slide shows the team on the project. Of course, this is us, our project partner, Metropolitan Water District. Our program manager, the board hired Kennedy Jenks to support Avek throughout this process. This is a new one added to the list. This is Stantec. As you recall, back in February, the board awarded a contract for engineering, design, and hydrogeology to this engineering firm. And we have our legal team for the land acquisitions, and then upcoming into the future will be our construction team and construction management. Some of the recent activity, as I just mentioned, the board awarded the contract to Stantec for the design. We've had 2 progress meetings so far. Those were held via Skype, and all the key members were in attendance that way, despite the COVID-19. And we did a pump test of an existing well on about the center of the property, which is the Tone Ranch well, to get some data to compile into a report. And we're continuing with the land acquisitions. Upcoming in the next month or 2, there will be an amendment to consider to Stantec's contract for the drilling of the 3 full-scale test wells. There was too much uncertainty initially into their contract of how much that was going to cost. They're going to bid those services out and provide Avek with a selection of bidders, and we can select the low bid. We would amend their contract to include that. So that'll be upcoming. And then, of course, continuing to work through the land. Some additional bullet points on some activities. As I mentioned, we had our kickoff meeting. This early stage of the project, there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered and delivered to Stantec to support some of their conceptual designs and modeling efforts. So Avek's staff has been getting that information over to them. And as I mentioned, we pump tested a Tone Ranch well. That data was collected and compiled into a report by a Kennedy Jenks sub-consultant. And that data is being developed by the Stantec team to develop the initial groundwater models. They've begun their field survey and aerial mapping work, and the hydrogeology and geotechnical team is creating a coordinated site plan for their drilling activities. Avek and Stantec met with DWR staff to discuss one of the early phases of the project, which is to reactivate an existing turnout that Avek has at 280th Street West. And so those discussions went pretty well. So we've got some follow-up on that. That'll be ongoing. And Stantec is working to develop the conceptual plan alternatives to present to Avek. This section will be populated in the future once we have a construction team on board. This is an update of the budget. Hopefully you guys can see this. We had our preliminary design, which is fully complete at this time. That was mostly related to the initial SQL work on the site. This column shows what contracts were approved and what's been the payout along with the available budget. So we added Stantec's contract in here that was awarded back in February. And of course, we have our contract with Kennedy Jenks and then some land acquisition costs. So in total, here's what we've spent or approved to date. We've committed about 11% of the total $131 million budget for the project. And currently we have existing available budget of about $116 million. This summarizes the contracts that the agency has entered into at this time. Kennedy Jenks for program management and Stantec for engineering, design, and hydrogeology. So we'll populate this list with the construction contracts and construction management, et cetera, as the project moves forward. This is the activity on the High Desert Water Bank Capital Program account. Last time you saw this, we really just had the initial deposits from Metropolitan Water District totaling $13 million. Some of that was for reimbursements of expenses that we had to date, and then a $5 million deposit in order for us to operate off of for the capital requirements of the project. So there's been various activities throughout the last couple months, and currently we've got about $3.2 million left in that capital program account. And as we draw that down, we'll go to Metropolitan to request another deposit in accordance with the agreement. Brief look at the timeline. We had our contract awarded. Some of these items I've already talked about, a couple progress meetings. We did have our meeting with DWR. The committee met last week and discussed some of the SQL work that's going to need to be done. There's some monitoring out of the site that's required at this time before any ground disturbance. It's not too expensive. We're going to go ahead and approve that under Dwayne's authority. And then the hydrogeological team will begin drilling early next month. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to have an amendment to Stantec's contract to include some of the drilling operations. No areas of concern at this point, and no board action required tonight. And that concludes that report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or go back.
Great report, Justin, and great progress. Thank you very much for that update. It's very important.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. As far as the state weather goes, we're in our drying period, and you can see that there might be a little bit of rain, and snow levels are about 6,000 feet. Here's a graph that shows the rainfall, and as you can see, we've started out May here as with a whimper. And we're not expecting a whole lot of rainfall during this month, but we're through and we haven't had much of any. As you look at the Northern Sierra, you can see we're going to be, in almost all cases, if you look at even in these very wet years, you can see by this time we're beginning to flatten out. So you're going to see us somewhere in the 28-inch range, someplace in there. So it's going to be a fairly dry year as far as precipitation goes. With regards to the State Water Project, you can see that we have our reservoirs are still fairly full, and that's thanks to a very wet year the previous year. As far as the April activities report, under groundwater basin stewardship, we're working on project plan and schedules. You heard about the High Desert Water Bank phase 1, and then we're working with partnerships to try and develop High Desert phase 2. Some other activities under water reliability areas, you can see we have Valley Iron was approved to correct the sealing at the Acton treatment plants. We've got pumps to replace on the East Side Water Treatment Plant and at Phillips Labs. We you had your update today on the incidental take permit and the long-term operation plan for the State Water Project. And we've also prepared some asset replacement and capital improvement plans for review for the 2021 budget year that we intend to present to various committees of the board to approve as part of the budget. Some other April activities associated with financial integrity include the Cali OES Form 130. We approved a vehicle replacement and maintenance program with Enterprise Fleet Management. We approved a purchase option agreement with S-Power for the old Calandry property. And as you heard tonight, we had an RFP distributed for audit firms to provide audits for the agency. In addition, under human resource stewardship activities in April, we had our compensation study, which is currently underway with Coffin Associates, and we also approved the policy for service. This last month, we approved a 3-year general manager contract. The agency also received their JPIA refund of approximately $90,000. We're working on an employee leave share program that's currently under development, and we continue to commit to the COVID-19 protocols. Under communications, we had a press release that was drafted with regards to the Aqua JPIA refund that's going to be considered by the Public Relations Committee. And we had an opportunity to participate in the Safety Awards program. We had a letter distributed to legislators requesting to correct tax credits for state and local governments in HR 6201. This would allow public sector employers to receive the same payroll credits and benefits as private sector employers. And the employees were notified of relevant COVID-19 information. As far as the state budget, I wasn't planning to talk about this too much, but I couldn't help myself. General revenue sources are projected to drop between 23 to 27%. The overall budget deficit that's identified by the state is $54.3 billion. They're anticipating $35 billion in state revenue shortfall this year and of the pandemic, and $85 billion in subsequent years. The revised budget from Governor Newsom is expected to come out in the next couple of days. And the number of bills remaining in the legislative session will be significantly reduced, and they have a budget requirement to pass by 6/15/20. There was some legislation earlier this year. Several state lawmakers wanted to make some revisions to the impact fees. That's unlikely to move forward at this present time, given where we are today with the state of the economy. And so we'll continue to monitor that legislation and see where it goes. Also, there's in April, 2 bills were introduced would invest $19.5 billion in water infrastructure. This is the America's Water Infrastructure Act. These are at a federal level, and the Drinking Water Infrastructure Act, which is $2.5 billion to help communities. We're watching these two bills because we have water banking infrastructure and others infrastructure that may be appropriate to apply for various grants and loan opportunities that may come out of those 2 bills, and these are associated with the stimulus acts that are anticipated to occur over the next several months to help revitalize the economy and move it forward. As far as events and schedules, we got a Memorial Day holiday on 5/25, and we also have a Wednesday board meeting of 5/27. I will be out of the office tomorrow, but we'll be working from home on Thursday and Friday if anyone should need me, and otherwise be here the balance of the month. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I made it on. All right.
Oh, hi, Director Lane. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, I was having some, believe it or not, I have technical difficulties at some point or another.
Okay. Item number 11, director's reports. Does any of the directors have anything to report? Item 12, Mr. Kim, attorney, do you have anything to report?
Yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I just want to report that I'm working on a project with staff in creating new forms for public works projects, both for a short form for informally bid projects and a longer series of documents for competitively bid projects. So I'll start with the first set of documents, the short form, so to speak, for non-competitively bid informal contracts. So it's always a fine balance between making a contract as short and succinct as possible, but also comprehensive and complying with all the various state laws that are out there. And so we've managed to try to keep that balance, and I have distributed to staff the draft short form that tries to keep that balance between a contract that's streamlined, but also has all the mandatory provisions required under the various state laws. These mandatory requirements are embedded in the labor code and public contract code and otherwise. So there are many traps for the unwary. So we're trying to incorporate all those minimum requirements in the short form. And then the longer set of documents for competitively bid public works projects. That's going to be a much more robust document that I'm still working on, and fairly near completion to turn around to staff for review. But that's going to be a lot more comprehensive, and it's a combination of efforts from our transactional team, who is very much in tune with all the state requirements for public works contracts, but also it includes some of my revisions based upon my 30 years of experience in litigating these sort of cases to anticipate potential disputes and try to make the provisions as favorable legally as possible for the agency. So that's the project that I'm working on, and just wanted to give a brief update for the board on what I'm working on. So any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this point.
Great. That sounds like something that we could use, and we appreciate you working on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 13, requests for any future agenda items. Do any of the directors have any requests? Okay, item 14, closed session. Do we have a reason to go into closed session?
Yes, we do on item D only.
Item D?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Bob, I move we go into closed session.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam. Gary Van Dam. Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, Justin Lane.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias. Keith Dias. Division 1, Shelley Somersible.
Yes. Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess and we'll go into closed session. So it's now 7:40, let's say 7:50. So 7:55.
And then this is Tilden. If the board wishes my presence at closed session, if someone can send me the link or the call-in number, then I could join.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.